The email landed in my inbox like a punch to the gut. Wedding staffing assignment. Duncan Wallace. Wedding. My name is Grace Duncan, and at 29, I've long accepted my role as the family black sheep. But even I wasn't prepared for this particular brand of cosmic irony. Claire Duncan, my older sister, was getting married, and I, her estranged, supposedly disastrous younger sister, was assigned to serve champagne at her reception. My first instinct was to delete the email, then call Antonio at the catering agency and tell him I had the plague. Or a sudden debilitating allergy to fake smiles and overpriced canapes. But the truth was, I couldn't afford to. 3 months ago, my life had imploded. Chase Wallace, my fiancé, had vanished, taking with him half my belongings and our entire joint savings account. He was 32, charming, and utterly devoid of a conscience. I was left with a mountain of debt, a broken heart, and a desperate need for every freelance photography gig and catering shift I could get. This wedding, no matter how much it twisted my stomach, was a paying job. Claire, at 31, was the family's golden child, a title she'd worn like a crown since birth. Our parents, Walter, 60, and Nadine, 58, had always treated her as the shining example, while I was the problem child, the one who never quite fit their meticulously crafted image. I still remember being 10 years old, Claire 12, and her telling me my art project was too messy for the refrigerator, then replacing it with her perfectly coloured-in drawing of a house. Or the time she borrowed my favourite sweater, then lost it, only for me to see her wearing it months later, claiming it was hers all along. It wasn't just about the objects. It was the casual dismissal, the constant chipping away at my worth, always with a sweet, innocent smile. "You're just so dramatic, Grace," my mother would sigh whenever I dared to call Claire out. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" So, here I was, in the opulent ballroom of the Hawthorne estate, a venue so exclusive it probably had its own postcode. I adjusted the black bow tie of my catering uniform, my hands clammy. The air buzzed with the low hum of excited chatter and the clinking of glasses. My co-worker, Antonio Vasquez, 34, a quiet, observant man with kind eyes, was already setting up the bar. He shot me a sympathetic glance, probably sensing my discomfort. He knew a little about my recent financial troubles, though not the full extent of the Chase situation. I moved towards the back, checking the champagne flutes. That's when I heard them. A gaggle of bridesmaids, their voices a little too loud, their laughter a little too shrill. Wren Shepherd, 30, Claire's best friend, and a trust fund baby who'd never worked a day in her life, was holding court. "Honestly, Claire, you're insane!" Wren giggled, her words slurring slightly. $7,000 on a bet about your own sister. Claire's voice, smug and saccharine, cut through the din. "Oh, come on, Wren. You know Grace. She's a disaster magnet. Especially now that she's, working for tips? She'll trip, she'll spill, she'll say something mortifying. It's practically guaranteed." Another bridesmaid chimed in. "And you really think she'll show up? After everything?" "She has to," Claire purred. "She needs the money. And she can't resist a good spectacle, even if she's the star of it. Besides, it's my wedding. She'll want to see me happy." The last part was dripping with venom. My grip tightened on the champagne bottle. $7,000. A bet that I, Grace Duncan, would somehow ruin her perfect day. The sheer audacity, The casual cruelty. It was Claire in a nutshell. She wasn't just getting married. She was staging a performance, and I was meant to be the tragicomic relief. Guests began to trickle in, a parade of designer suits and glittering gowns. Faces I hadn't seen in years, relatives who'd always looked through me rather than at me. I plastered on my professional smile, offering flutes of sparkling wine, my mind a whirlwind of old hurts and fresh indignation. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a battlefield. I turned to refill my tray, reaching for another bottle of champagne. My gaze swept across the room, past the floral arrangements, the string quartet, the beaming faces of the early arrivals. And then my hand froze. The bottle clattered against the other flutes, a small, sharp sound lost in the growing buzz of conversation. Standing at the end of the aisle, next to the elaborate floral arch, his back to me, was the groom. He turned slightly, laughing at something the officiant said. The profile was unmistakable. The way his dark hair curled just so at the nape of his neck, the broad shoulders. My breath hitched. It was Chase. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, suffocating silence of the ballroom. Chase. It was undeniably him. The same man who, 3 months ago, had packed a single duffel bag, emptied our joint savings, and vanished without a trace, leaving me with nothing but a note that read, "Sorry, Grace. This isn't working." Sorry? He'd stolen my life, my trust, and my future, and all he could muster was sorry. I remembered the day he proposed. It was a crisp autumn evening, 8 months before he disappeared. We were on a hike, overlooking the city lights. He dropped to one knee, a simple silver band glinting in the twilight. "Grace, I can't imagine my life without you," he'd said, his eyes earnest, his smile so genuine it could melt glaciers. "Will you marry me?" I'd said yes, of course. I'd been so stupidly, blissfully happy. We'd even gone to the courthouse a few weeks later, just the two of us, for a quick, private ceremony. He'd said it was romantic, intimate, a secret just for us before the big family wedding. A lie, it turned out, like everything else. That was 11 months ago. Now, here he was, 32 years old, standing at the altar, about to marry my sister. A wave of nausea washed over me, so potent I thought I might actually drop the tray. My vision swam. He'd betrayed me, yes, but this was a whole new level of calculated cruelty. And Claire knew. She had to. There was no way she didn't. Just then, Claire, 31, floated down the aisle, her custom-made gown shimmering under the chandeliers. She looked radiant, perfectly coiffed, the picture of bridal perfection. As she reached Chase, she leaned in, a private whisper, then pulled back, her smile wide and dazzling for the assembled guests. But as she straightened, her eyes, sharp and triumphant, flickered past Chase's shoulder, locking onto mine. A slow, mocking smirk spread across her face, subtle enough that no one else would notice, but clear as day to me. It was a silent, venomous, "I win." I forced myself to breathe, to move. My hands trembled as I offered champagne flutes to guests, a parade of distant relatives and family friends. Mrs. Henderson, my mother's bridge partner, took a glass, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Oh, Grace, dear, how wonderful to see you. You're helping out?" Her tone was dripping with pity, barely disguised. "Yes, Mrs. Henderson, just for the day," I managed, my voice tight. As I circulated, I caught snippets of conversation. "Claire's really done well for herself, hasn't she?" A woman whispered to her husband. "Marrying up." "Such a catch! That Chase Wallace." Another chimed in. "Yes, after Grace's unfortunate choices, it's good to see one of the Duncan girls making a sensible match." Unfortunate choices. That was me, always. The whispers were a familiar soundtrack to my life, a constant reminder of my perceived failings. My parents, Walter and Nadine, stood near the front, beaming, basking in Claire's reflected glory. They hadn't even glanced my way. It was as if I were invisible, or worse, a stain they preferred not to acknowledge. Antonio, my co-worker, 34, appeared beside me, his brow furrowed with concern. "Grace, you look like you've seen a ghost." His voice was low, empathetic. I shook my head, trying to compose myself. "Worse," I muttered, my gaze fixed on Chase, who was now laughing easily with Claire. "Much worse." Antonio followed my gaze, then his eyes widened slightly as he recognized Chase. He didn't say anything, just put a hand on my arm, a silent offer of support. "He was my fiancé," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "3 months ago, he disappeared, took everything, our savings, half my stuff, ghosted me." Antonio's expression hardened. "The bastard!" He paused, then added, "What do you need?" "A moment," I said, my voice barely audible. "I need a moment alone." He nodded, understanding. "Go, I'll cover your section." "Just don't do anything you'll regret." I gave him a weak smile. "Too late for that, Antonio. Way too late." I slipped away, finding a quiet corridor that led to the venue's administrative office. The door was ajar, a cleaning cart parked outside. Perfect. I pushed it open, stepped inside, and quietly closed the door behind me. The room was small, cluttered with invoices and event schedules. My hands were still shaking as I pulled out my phone. I navigated to my cloud storage, my fingers fumbling slightly. I found the file, the one I'd scanned and saved months ago, almost on a whim, after that quick courthouse ceremony. A small, nagging voice in the back of my mind had told me to keep a copy, just in case. I opened the document. The stark black and white image filled my screen. An official government form, crisp and clear. At the top, in bold letters, "Marriage Certificate." Below, our names, typed neatly, Grace Elizabeth Duncan and Chase Alexander Wallace. And the date, undeniable, legally binding, 11 months ago. The marriage certificate glowed on my phone screen, a beacon of truth in a room full of lies. Grace Elizabeth Duncan and Chase Alexander Wallace. Married. 11 months ago. The date was undeniable. My mind raced, a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and a strange, cold clarity. He hadn't just ghosted me, he'd committed bigamy, or at least he was about to. I quickly opened a new tab on my phone, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I searched for the county civil records, specifically for divorce filings. My heart pounded in my chest as the page loaded. I typed in Chase's name, then mine. I hit enter. The results came back blank. No records found. I tried again, double-checking the spelling, the dates. Still nothing. No divorce petition, no final decree. Nothing. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. This was fact. I was still legally married to Chase Wallace. I took a deep, shaky breath, then dialed the number for the county courthouse. It was a long shot, calling on a Saturday, but sometimes they had an automated system. To my surprise, a live person answered. County Clerk's office. How can I help you? Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, professional. I'm calling to verify a marriage certificate. I have the names and date, but I just wanted to confirm its validity and if there are any associated divorce filings. I gave them my name and Chase's, along with the date of our courthouse wedding. There was a pause, a few clicks on the other end. One moment, please. The silence stretched, each second feeling like an eternity. My palms were sweating. What if I was wrong? What if he'd somehow filed it in secret? Okay, Ms. Duncan. The clerk's voice finally returned, calm and clear. I'm showing a valid marriage certificate for Grace Elizabeth Duncan and Chase Alexander Wallace, dated 11 months ago. There are no divorce filings associated with either name in our system. A wave of something akin to triumph, mixed with a chilling sense of dread, washed over me. It was valid. I was still married, and Chase was about to commit a felony. Thank you, I managed, my voice a little breathless. That's all I needed. I hung up, my hand still gripping the phone. The implications crashed over me. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about legality. I stepped out of the office, my mind buzzing. Antonio was still covering my section, looking worried. He saw the look on my face and immediately knew something had shifted. Grace, what is it? He asked, his voice low. I led him to a quieter corner, near the kitchen entrance. He never divorced me, I whispered, my eyes wide. We got married at the courthouse 11 months ago. He never filed. I just checked the records. I called the clerk. It's still legally binding. Antonio's eyes widened. You're serious? So he's about to marry your sister while still married to you? Exactly, I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Bigamy. In this state, it's a felony. Antonio whistled softly. Okay, so what's the plan? He didn't question my motives, didn't try to talk me out of it. He just wanted to know how he could help. That's why I trusted him. He was loyal, and he understood the kind of quiet fury that could simmer beneath the surface. The Officiant, I said, my voice gaining strength. He'll have a file, all the legal documents for the ceremony. We need to get this certificate in there, right before the ceremony starts. How? Antonio asked, ever practical. He'll be busy, and security is tight. I'll figure it out, I said, a cold resolve settling over me. I'll pretend there's a catering issue, something with the menu. Get him alone for a second. Slip it in. Antonio nodded slowly. Risky, but effective. The chaos will do the rest. I thought about my family, my parents, Walter and Nadine. They'd never believed I was engaged to Chase in the first place. When I'd told them, excitedly about the proposal, my mother had just sniffed, Grace, dear, are you sure he's serious? He seems a bit flighty. And you do tend to exaggerate. My father had just grunted, buried behind his newspaper. They'd called Chase my imaginary rebound, a temporary distraction from my supposed inability to hold down a stable relationship. They'd never even met him. They'd simply dismissed him, and by extension, me. This, I realized, was going to be a reckoning not just for Chase, but for all of them. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text, not to me, but a screenshot of a group chat. Claire's name was at the top. It was a selfie. Claire, Wren, and another bridesmaid, Avery, 27, laughing, their faces flushed with champagne. The caption read, "Can't wait to see what she ruins. 7K bet is on." And in the background, out of focus, holding a tray of champagne flutes, was me. The text from Claire's group chat, with my blurry figure in the background, solidified the cold resolve in my gut. They weren't just betting on me, they were mocking me, flaunting their cruelty. The wedding reception was still hours away, but the rehearsal dinner was in full swing, a more intimate affair held in a private dining room at the Hawthorne estate, overlooking the vineyards. I was still on duty, circulating with appetizers, a ghost in my own family's celebration. I moved through the room, a phantom server, my smile fixed, my mind a buzzing hive of anger and planning. My parents, Walter, 60, and Nadine, 58, were holding court at the head table. Walter, my emotionally distant father, was laughing a little too loudly, his arm around my mother. I watched them, a familiar ache in my chest. They'd always been so proud of Claire, so dismissive of me. I was refilling a water pitcher near the head table when I heard my father's voice, low and conspiratorial. He was talking to someone I couldn't quite see, but the words cut through me like a knife. "Thank God Claire's finally fixing the Duncan name," he muttered, his voice thick with relief. After Grace's little escapades, we needed this, a proper, respectable marriage. My little escapades. That's what he called my life, my struggles, my heartbreak. A casual dismissal of everything I'd been through, all the while implying I was a stain on the family's pristine image. My jaw clenched. He was talking about me, his own daughter, as if I were a public embarrassment that Claire, the golden child, was finally rectifying. The betrayal stung, fresh and sharp, even though it was a familiar wound. I forced myself to move away, my hands trembling slightly. As I rounded a corner, I saw Avery Hamilton, 27, one of the newer bridesmaids, standing slightly apart from the main group. She was looking at her phone, but her gaze kept flicking towards Claire, who was in the middle of an animated story, surrounded by a few other bridesmaids. Claire's voice, a high-pitched imitation, drifted across the room. And then she just sobbed into her pillow for days, going on about true love and how he took everything. "Honestly, Grace, you're just so dramatic." Claire dissolved into peals of laughter, miming a breakdown, her face contorted in a caricature of despair. It was me. She was impersonating my breakdown after Chase left. The humiliation was a hot flush on my cheeks, but then I noticed Avery. Her face was unsmiling, a flicker of something like disgust in her eyes. And her phone wasn't just in her hand. It was subtly angled, the camera app open. She was recording. A tiny spark of hope, cold and unexpected, ignited within me. An outsider, someone who wasn't already blinded by Claire's golden glow. Just then, Chase, 32, walked past me, heading towards the bar. Our eyes met. For a split second, his charming facade faltered. His smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Guilt? Fear? Recognition? He hesitated, his gaze darting away, then back to me, before he quickly averted his eyes and hurried on. It was a brief, almost imperceptible moment, but it was enough. He knew. He recognized me, and he was clearly rattled. Good. The Officiant, A portly man in a clerical collar was now mingling near the dessert table. This was my chance. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and approached him, a professional smile plastered on my face. "Excuse me, Reverend," I said, my voice polite and earnest. "I'm Grace, from the catering team. I just had a quick question about the menu for tomorrow's reception. We had a last-minute dietary restriction come in, and I wanted to confirm it with you, as it impacts the main course for the head table." He turned, a genial smile on his face. "Oh, certainly, my dear. What seems to be the issue?" "If you could just step over here for a moment," I said, leading him slightly away from the main group towards a less crowded area near a decorative plant. "It's a bit complicated." As he leaned in, patiently listening to my fabricated story about a non-existent nut allergy, I subtly reached into the inner pocket of my uniform jacket. My fingers closed around the folded, scanned copy of my marriage certificate. It was printed on high-quality paper, looking official. "And if you could just make a note of it in your file for tomorrow," I continued, my voice smooth. "I've actually printed out a quick reminder for you. It's quite urgent, just to ensure there are no mix-ups." I held out the folded paper, carefully labeled "Urgent Reading, Duncan Wallace Ceremony." He took it, his brow furrowed slightly as he glanced at the label. "Oh, very thorough of you, my dear. I'll make sure to review it before the ceremony." He tucked it into the top of the folder he was carrying, the one clearly marked with Claire and Chase's names. "Thank you so much, Reverend," I said, my smile genuine this time. "That would be a huge help." I walked away, my heart pounding, a tremor of exhilaration running through me. It was done. The seed was planted. The fuse was lit. Later that evening, as I was gathering my things, ready to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the rehearsal dinner, a voice stopped me. "Grace." I turned. It was Avery Hamilton, the bridesmaid who had been recording Claire. She was standing a few feet away, her expression serious, her phone still in her hand. "I know who you are," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "And I saw what Claire just did." "What exactly are you planning tomorrow?" Avery Hamilton's question hung in the air between us, sharp and direct. "What exactly are you planning tomorrow?" I hesitated, weighing my options. She was an outsider, not part of Claire's inner circle of sycophants. She'd seen Claire's cruelty firsthand, and she'd recorded it. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't like the rest of them. "He was my fiancé," I said, my voice low, barely a whisper. "Chase. 3 months ago he disappeared. Took our joint savings, half my belongings, just vanished." I watched her face for a reaction. Her eyes, wide and surprised, showed genuine shock. "He proposed to you?" Avery asked, her voice incredulous. Claire said, "She said he was just a casual fling, a rebound after some bad breakup, and that you were obsessed with him." "Claire lies," I stated flatly. "A lot. We were engaged. We even had a small courthouse wedding 11 months ago. Just us." "He never filed for divorce." Avery's jaw dropped. "You're serious? So he's still married to you?" I nodded. "Legally, yes. I checked the civil records, and I called the county clerk today. No divorce filed. Not by him, not by me." Avery stared at me, her mind clearly reeling. "Oh my God. Claire has no idea, does she?" "Not a clue," I confirmed, a grim satisfaction settling over me. She thinks she's won. She thinks she's marrying up, finally securing her perfect life, and that I'm just the poor, pathetic sister serving her drinks. Avery let out a slow breath. That's insane. And Claire, she's been so awful about you, constantly talking about your drama and how you're going to ruin everything. She paused, then looked at me, a new light in her eyes. So, what are you going to do? The Officiant has a copy of my marriage certificate, I explained, keeping my voice calm, even though my heart was racing. I slipped it into his folder, labeled Urgent Reading. He's supposed to review all the documents before the ceremony. Avery's eyes widened further. You're going to expose him at the altar. It's not just about him, I said, my voice hardening. It's about Claire and my parents and every single person who has ever looked down on me, dismissed me, or believed Claire's twisted version of reality. They called Chase my imaginary rebound. They laughed at my heartbreak. They bet money on my public humiliation. I thought of the $7,000 bet. This isn't just revenge, Avery. This is justice. Avery was silent for a moment, processing. Then a slow smile spread across her face. You know what? Good for you. That's beautifully petty. And legally sound. She held up her phone. I've been recording Claire's little tirades all weekend. The ones where she's mocking you, talking about the bet. I can get more. Different angles. Just in case. Just in case, I echoed, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time all weekend. That would be incredibly helpful. Consider it done, Avery said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I'm sick of Claire's act. She's a nightmare. And, honestly, this is going to be epic. The next day, the morning of the wedding, dawned bright and clear. The Hawthorne estate buzzed with a nervous energy. I was back in my black uniform, moving through the pre-ceremony chaos, serving mimosas and trying to appear utterly unremarkable. Antonio gave me a subtle nod as I passed him, a silent check-in. I saw Claire, resplendent in her wedding gown, being fussed over by a team of stylists and her gaggle of bridesmaids. Wren Shepherd, 30, Claire's best friend, leaned in, whispering something. I caught a fragment of their conversation as I passed with a tray of sparkling wine. Grace is holding together surprisingly well, Claire murmured to Wren, a hint of disappointment in her voice. Shame I'll win the bet the moment she trips, or cries, or does something typically Grace. Wren giggled. Don't worry, Claire. There's still plenty of time for a meltdown. I suppressed a tremble. They were still so confident, so smug. The ceremony was about to begin. Guests were ushered into the grand ballroom, taking their seats. The string quartet began to play a soft, classical piece. I took my place near the back, by the entrance, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Chase, 32, walked down the aisle, looking impossibly handsome in his tailored suit. He took his place in front of the Officiant, a confident, easy smile on his face. He glanced around the room, his eyes sweeping over the guests, before settling on the entrance, waiting for Claire. He didn't see me. Not really, just another server in the background. Good. The music swelled. Claire began her slow, majestic walk down the aisle, escorted by our father, Walter, 60. She looked like a queen, every inch the golden child, her smile radiant. My mother, Nadine, 58, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, a picture of maternal pride. Claire reached the altar, her hand slipping into Chase's. They exchanged loving glances, a picture of perfect happiness. The officiant, the same man I'd spoken to yesterday, smiled warmly at the couple. He opened his large, leather-bound folder, the one containing all the official documents. He adjusted his glasses, scanning the first page. And then he paused. His brow furrowed. He squinted, leaning closer to the document. A beat of silence stretched, thick and heavy. "Before proceeding," the officiant began, his voice suddenly hesitant, a note of confusion replacing his earlier warmth. There seems to be an issue." He looked up from the paper, his gaze sweeping across the room, then settling, with a distinct look of bewilderment, on the name printed clearly on the active marriage license in his hand, Grace Duncan. A beat of stunned silence descended upon the ballroom, thick and suffocating. The string quartet, sensing the shift, trailed off, leaving an awkward, echoing quiet. Every eye was on the officiant, whose face was a mask of confusion, his gaze fixed on the document in his hand. Then, a sharp, collective gasp rippled through the guests. Someone in the front row, a distant cousin, pointed. Claire, 31, her face contorted in a mixture of disbelief and fury, shrieked, "What? What is it?" Her voice cut through the silence like a knife. The officiant, clearly flustered, cleared his throat. He looked from the document to Chase, then to Claire, his expression apologetic. I apologize, but it seems there's a significant issue here. According to this official document, which was placed in my file this morning, Mr. Chase Wallace is already legally married." He paused, then, with a hesitant glance towards me, read the name aloud. "To Grace Elizabeth Duncan." Another gasp, louder this time, swept through the room. Murmurs erupted, a cacophony of whispers and shocked exclamations. Chase, 32, standing beside Claire, went ashen. His confident smirk evaporated, replaced by wide-eyed panic. He stammered, "What? No, that's impossible. It's a mistake." He lunged for the document, but the officiant instinctively pulled it back. Claire's face, moments ago radiant, was now a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "Chase! What is he talking about? What is this?" She grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. Guests, sensing the unfolding disaster, immediately pulled out their phones. The soft glow of screens illuminated faces contorted in shock, curiosity, and schadenfreude. Avery Hamilton, 27, was already subtly recording from her vantage point. Her phone held steady. I saw her glance at me, a silent confirmation. My father, Walter, 60, stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Reverend, there must be some mistake. This is Claire's wedding. This is an outrage." He tried to restore order, but it was useless. The room was a swirling vortex of chaos. This was my cue. I took a deep breath, pushing down the tremor in my hands. I walked forward, slowly, deliberately, towards the front of the room. Every eye swiveled to me. Claire's eyes, full of venom, followed my every step. Chase looked like a deer caught in headlights. I stopped a few feet from the altar, my voice calm, clear, and steady, cutting through the din. "There's no mistake, Father, and no outrage, unless it's the one Chase has committed." I looked directly at Chase, my gaze unwavering. He never served me divorce papers. That marriage license? I nodded towards the document in the officiant's hand. It never ended. It's still legally binding. I then turned my gaze to the stunned faces of the guests, to my parents, to Claire. And in our state, I continued, my voice gaining strength, you need consent to remarry if you're already legally bound. Without a divorce, this wedding is, well, it's illegal. It's bigamy. The word hung in the air, a bombshell. More gasps, more frantic filming. Claire's face, already pale, drained of all colour. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, fixed on me, then on Chase, then back to the officiant. The realization, slow and agonizing, dawned on her face. Her perfect day, her carefully constructed image, her entire world was crumbling around her. She swayed, a barely perceptible wobble. Chase reached out a hand, but she swatted it away. Her eyes rolled back in her head. With a soft, muffled thud, Claire Duncan, the golden child, the perfect bride, fainted. She didn't just fall. She face-planted directly into the towering six-tiered wedding cake, her pristine white gown instantly smeared with buttercream and fondant roses. Avery's phone, held steady in her hand, was live. The silence that followed Claire's faceplant into the wedding cake was deafening, broken only by the frantic clicks and whirs of phone cameras. Then, a collective gasp, followed by a ripple of nervous titters that quickly escalated into outright laughter from some of the less sympathetic guests. Avery's phone was still live, capturing every buttercream-smeared, fondant-covered detail. Chaos rained down like meteors. My father, Walter, 60, rushed to Claire's side, his face a mask of horror and mortification. Nadine, 58, my mother, let out a strangled cry, clutching her pearls. Chase, 32, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He stammered something about a misunderstanding, but no one was listening. Guests, sensing the party was well and truly over, began to filter out, their whispers growing louder, their phones still held aloft. Vendors, looking bewildered, started packing up their equipment. The string quartet, bless their hearts, just sat there, instruments in hand, unsure whether to play a dirge or a triumphant fanfare. The mood was apocalyptic, a beautiful disaster. As people streamed past me, a few stopped. "I can't believe this!" a distant aunt exclaimed, her eyes wide. "I always thought Chase was a bit too charming, you know." But to do this to Claire... "And Grace," another woman interjected, looking at me with a mix of pity and awe. Wasn't he with you first?" That's when it started. The confessions. Claire's oldest friend, a woman named Bethany, who I vaguely remembered from childhood, approached me, her face pale. "Grace, I'm so sorry. I suspected something. Chase was always a little too vague about his past. And Claire, she just shut me down every time I tried to ask. Said I was being negative and jealous. She said you were just making things up for attention." Bethany looked genuinely remorseful. "We all just went along with it, because it was Claire." It was the same story, repeated in different variations. Some people had known Chase was involved with both sisters, or at least suspected. But Claire, with her golden child status and her iron will, had silenced all doubts, gaslit anyone who questioned her narrative. They'd all just pretended. Pretended I was crazy. pretended Chase was a figment of my imagination. I saw Claire being helped up, her face a mess of tears and cake, her gown ruined. My parents were fussing over her, oblivious to the fact that their carefully constructed image had just shattered into a million pieces. I walked past the wreckage, past the retreating guests, and headed towards the bridal room. I knew she'd be there. The door was ajar. Claire was inside, pacing like a caged tiger, tearing off her veil, cake frosting still clinging to her hair. Walter and Nadine were trying to calm her down, but she was beyond consolation. "Get out!" Claire shrieked at them, her voice raw. "Both of you, get out!" They hesitated, then, seeing the fury in her eyes, retreated, casting me a bewildered glance as they passed. The door clicked shut behind them. It was just Claire and me, 29 and 31. Sisters. Enemies. "You!" Claire screamed, spinning to face me, her eyes blazing with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "You ruined everything. You always do. You can't stand it, can you? That I finally have something perfect, something you could never have." "Perfect?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You call marrying a bigamist perfect? He stole from me, Claire. He abandoned me. He lied to you, too." "He wouldn't have if you hadn't scared him off," she retorted, her voice cracking. "You're always so dramatic, so needy. He told me you were obsessed, that you made up the engagement." "He was still legally married to me, Claire," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "He committed a felony, and you, my dear sister, were about to be an accessory to it." She flinched, the word hitting home. "I don't care. I wanted him. I wanted this life. I wanted to finally take the one thing you thought was yours." Her chest heaved, tears streaming down her cake-smeared face. "I wanted to win. Just once, I wanted to win something you cared about." The confession hung in the air, thick with decades of resentment, envy, and the toxic favoritism that had poisoned our relationship. She hadn't gone after Chase because she loved him. She'd gone after him because he was mine. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not a triumphant golden child, but a broken, desperate woman. And for a fleeting moment I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy. Just a cold, hard satisfaction. "You succeeded," I said, my voice flat. "You took him, and now he belongs to neither of us. You're welcome." I turned to leave, the silence in the room heavy with unspoken truths. As I stepped out, Antonio, 34, was waiting for me. He held out a thick, white envelope. "Grace," he said, his voice quiet. "The reception is officially cancelled. The catering company's retainer and bonus were forfeited due to the breach of contract. All wedding staff were told to take their share. This is yours." I took the envelope. It felt surprisingly heavy. I opened it, my fingers brushing against a stack of crisp $100 bills. I counted them. $7,000. Claire's old bet. The days following the wedding disaster were a blur of viral videos and frantic phone calls. Avery Hamilton's live stream of Claire's cake face plant, combined with my calm declaration of bigamy, had exploded online. Sister stopped. The ceremony was trending, alongside Ha Bigamy Bride and Juck and Cake Gate. The internet, in its infinite wisdom, had found its new favorite spectacle. Chase Wallace, 32, vanished from all social media platforms. His charming online presence, once meticulously curated, was scrubbed clean. I heard through the grapevine, a whisper from Antonio who'd heard it from a vendor, that he'd been served with a summons for bigamy. Good. Let him face the music. Claire, 31, ever the master of damage control, eventually issued an apology post. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive martyrdom. She spoke of unforeseen complications and personal betrayals, carefully omitting any mention of her own role in the drama or her $7,000 bet. She painted herself as the victim, gracefully navigating a difficult family situation. It was exactly what I expected. She couldn't admit fault, not even to save face. My phone, usually a quiet device, became a hotbed of unexpected messages. Some were from distant relatives, condemning me for ruining Claire's special day and airing family laundry. My mother, Nadine, 58, sent a terse text. "You've humiliated us all, Grace. I don't know why you always have to be so difficult." My father, Walter, 60, didn't text, but a few days later, a check arrived in the mail. $10,000. The memo line was blank. Hush! Money, I thought, or perhaps a desperate attempt to assuage some long-buried guilt. I didn't cash it. Instead, I donated the entire amount in my mother's name to a local women's shelter that supported victims of financial abuse. It felt right. But then there were the other messages. A few cousins, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out. "I always knew Claire was a piece of work," one wrote. "I'm so sorry, Grace. We should have listened." Even Bethany, Claire's oldest friend, called to genuinely apologize for not believing me sooner. It wasn't a flood of apologies, but it was enough. Enough to know that the truth, messy and inconvenient as it was, had finally cut through the carefully constructed lies. I didn't post a long, cathartic statement online. I didn't need to. The videos, the trending hashtags, the hushed conversations, they spoke for themselves. My silence was louder than any explanation I could offer. It was a statement of quiet strength, a refusal to engage in the same desperate need for validation that consumed my sister. My life wasn't magically fixed. I still had bills to pay, still worked freelance photography gigs and catering shifts. But the crushing weight of being the family's scapegoat, the constant feeling of being less than, had lifted. The world knew the truth now. My truth. And it was a powerful thing. I wasn't invited to the wedding, but I left with a lot more than I came with, including peace, a few $1,000s, and the satisfaction of watching Karma walk in wearing heels. Mine.